All right, Jesse on Fire, welcome back to the channel. I got a big show for you guys today. Big show, okay? Sometimes I wake up and I look at the news and I'm like, ooh, slim pickings. Not today. Big news, lots of topics. This is gonna, if, you guys watched my video yesterday and it was only, 12 or 13 minutes and some people were like, dude, Jesse, come on, man. I rely on your video to be longer than that. Well, I can promise you today is going to be a lot longer. Now, I have a meeting in about 35 minutes, so this video will probably be about 35 minutes. So, here we go. First off, before I get into talking about Khabib's next fight, the date, all that, more Khamzat, Chimaev, Conor fake Twitter, Princess Perry, Mike Perry's ex-wife, coming out and making some pretty harsh accusations at Mike Perry. Why don't you subscribe to the channel? Click all the buttons. Button. Basically, you can't click a button and then have it not benefit me. So just click a button, okay? If you're one of these people that is watching my show every single day and you're not subscribed, do me a solid and just press subscribe and then don't ring the bell, okay? If you don't want to get notified, just click the button and that way it shows I have more subscribers, because guess what? That's how I get people to come on the show, right? As of right now, I have to show people my TikTok. It's like, look, TikTok, 200,000 subs. Want to do an interview? And they're like, oh, all right. Then they come to my YouTube. They're like, geez, this guy's small time. They don't understand where this is going. If they watch one of my videos and they're like, oh, shit. All right, I'll do it with this guy. But, the subs help. Anyway, so first off, we got a date for Khabib's next fight. October 24th. And we know for sure that is against Justin Gaethje. So, barring a, some kind of COVID test or, thank goodness he's not fighting Tony Ferguson. Otherwise, we would have to entertain, an asteroid impact or something, or like the Armageddon of, a nuclear exchange. Some kind of thing, just literally, think about that, dude. Think about that. So we've gone 0-4, and on the 5th time we tried to book the fight, we had a global pandemic for the first time in 100 years. That's what did the fight in. A global pandemic. Think about that, okay? So I'm lucky Gaethje won. Otherwise, this fight would be with Tony Ferguson, and most likely none of us would survive. So, but yeah, October 24th, that's going to be Gaethje and Khabib. So the main focus, if you think about these fights like I do, is going to be around Khabib's, right? From an you know what? I want to say one other thing about this. One thing that I've noticed as I've been watching footage of Khabib training, his striking looks very good. Like, very good. Looks very improved. Like, I'm watching him hit mitts and watching him hit the bag. This guy, dude, he has real power in his hands now. Seriously, this is not a guy whose career I'm unfamiliar with. I've been watching his entire career. And from what I've seen, and obviously hitting the bag and hitting the pads isn't really a huge indication of how quality a person's going to be in the octagon. As you can, Ronda Rousey looked amazing hitting pads, right? But I'm talking about power, and you absolutely can tell power hitting a bag, hitting mitts, etc., right? You watch Mike Tyson hit the mitts. You can tell that if you took a shot from Mike Tyson that you're going to wake up in 6 weeks in the ICU, right? And Khabib's power looks very good. Very good. And, so people say that, power punchers are born. You can't really make one. And in my experience, that actually is true. Like, in terms of, these guys that I've seen, I can't think of someone who was kind of a pity-pat fighter who then at a certain point became like a heavy shot knockout guy. Anyone can get knocked out if they don't see the shot coming and it hits them right. But you know what I'm talking about. Like, guys who are really heavy strikers, that's something that is born. Now, I personally, not to inject myself, but that is something I was born with. When I first started kickboxing, now I played soccer forever, so learning kicks was pretty easy for me. But I remember I was actually in a class, and we were it was a million low kicks or whatever, and I was just whap 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 whap, and I was there with some guys from my work, and and I could tell they weren't kicking the bag. So I turned to my right, and they were just watching me kick the bag. They're like, hey, why don't you kick that a little harder? Like, they couldn't even wrap their brain around that I could, because we had all started at the same time, and these guys are like doing it for fun, where I had already been a boxer. This is just my first time doing kickboxing, and I took to it really fast. But they were like, none of them would let me kick their legs. Let's just put it like that. I have no idea what this has to do with anything. Literally nothing. But I have always thought about that in the story of like power punchers are born. I've always known I was in that category as someone who was born ready, just whap. As you could also tell if you go on my Instagram and watch me max out that punching bag game. I've never seen one of those where I did not try to break the record. I would say my average, like my percentage when I see one of those, like, the one of those. I mean, that would have broken no records. It's really more like this. But anytime I see one of those little drop down punching bags where it scores your power, 100% of the time I try it, and I would say my record of breaking the record at the particular place is probably around 30%. I would say 3 out of 10 times I break the record, whatever's there. Anyway, so that was a total derail, but Khabib has got pop now, and he looks fast, he looks sharp, and he looks powerful. And I was thinking about this. Can you guys imagine if Khabib knocked out Gaethje on his feet? Can you imagine that? Like, can you imagine if Khabib, coming off of his father passing away, he fights Justin Gaethje, one of the most feared strikers in the history of the 155-pound division, and he stands with Gaethje and he dirt naps him? Can you imagine that? How bananas would that be? Seriously. And then he goes down, he gives it up for his dad. That's one of those things where, actually, in all honesty, if Khabib wins, period, if you watch the sport and you're really tied to the like emotional journey that these guys are on, that's a post-fight where you can kind of feel that right there. If you really if you watch a sport like I do, where it's not just, who's going to win? Because I think the reason why people like watching my channel and listening to my takes is because you can hear from the way that I discuss these things that I'm not just thinking about these guys going in there like a couple roosters and fighting. Like, I'm thinking about the life journey that these guys are on and how the fights play into that, because there's just no other event where you can have this little condensed, compartmentalized thing that happens that has such a huge impact on, their life going forward. The success or failure in a fight is just so astronomical. I mean, every once in a while you have a fight where both guys kind of win. I think Darren Till and Robert Whitaker is one of those. I'm going to talk about that after this, actually. But yeah, man, if Khabib wins that fight in any capacity, especially if he knocks out Gaethje or he has to dig really deep, like it's like a 5-round war and he has to like dig all the way down, like it's like this hardest fight ever, the hardest fight of his entire career. Because, he's walked through every single opponent he's ever had. That's the thing. It's like he has literally walked through every single opponent. Here's the other thing. So the other week or whatever, a couple days ago, when I did that video about Khabib kind of having a mental edge over Conor, and I talked about how he's sneaky good at hyping fights. What I respect also about Khabib is that he's only going to play that game if you're playing. Like, he's going to play to the level of his opponent, right? Like, he's going to hype a fight to the level that his opponent hypes the fight, right? Like, so if Conor wants to come and throw a fucking dolly through the bus window, then Khabib's going to be like, send me your location. We can bang this out before we fight. Just give me a parking lot. If you're not afraid to fight me without a referee, where there's no one who can pull me off of you, just give me your location. We can do this one-on-one. We can meet in a parking lot. But there's not going to be anyone to save you, okay? No one to save you. You can't tap out. No tapping out if we meet in a parking lot. That's just, that is playing to the level of his opponent. And Tony Ferguson, he wants to play the sunglasses and kind of do some like, I'm off in La La Land, whatever Tony's shtick is. And he plays to the level of his opponent, right? When did you get in a street fight? kicks the belt off the stage. He's playing to the level of his opponent. Dustin wants to be super respectful. He'll trade shirts with him after the fight, right? And I think with Gaethje, it's going to be. I just think it's going to be a relatively quiet buildup, especially given because of COVID and everything. But these two guys, like Gaethje doesn't. He's not a hype the fight guy, but he's also not a I'm friends with you guy. If you watch because Gaethje and Cowboy are really good buddies. Like that. Gaethje and Cowboy are really good buddies. But if you watch the Gaethje and Cowboy buildup, Cowboy is trying to do the thing that he normally does, where he's like, "Hey, man," and Gaethje was like, "No, we're not friends this week." Like Gaethje needs to have some level of disdain, or like he can't be buddies with the guy, right? And you saw that when he knocked out Cowboy, where he didn't want to hit him again, right? I have a lot of respect for that, obviously, and I would be the same way. Like that would be really hard for me to, like, if it was someone who I was buddies with, like someone who I trained a bunch with, to go in there and, like, I would have to do what Gaethje does. I would have to just be like, "Look, dude, like, we can't, not this week," right? But yeah, and I was thinking about what I said about Conor getting in Gaethje's head, and I was like, okay, so if there's a way into Gaethje's head, because I basically made a pretty blanket statement that Gaethje could be mind fucked, and that Conor would figure out a way to do it, and so I was like, okay, well, if that's the truth, what is it? Like, what's the way in? Because getting him mad at his opponent, that's not it. It's not just, because I said, he can get mad. It's not just making him mad. It would need to be getting him mad, but making him question himself. Okay, so you need Gaethje to start questioning himself for the first time, right? It would be about making him nervous, and then in the fight, you'd have to frustrate him early, right? So it would be like a combination of the boo game and then simultaneously how you fought him early, right? But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So Gaethje and Khabib is happening. Very, very exciting. Very, very exciting, right? So now, I actually wasn't even going to talk about this, but I just touched on it, and I wanted to say something about this right now real quick, in terms of Whitaker and Till. So Till said after the fight that he thought both guys won. And I thought about that, and I was like, Whitaker won, Whitaker won. Like, I don't think anybody was questioning the decision. I think Till won the first and fifth round, and then Whitaker won 2, 3, 4. Plain and simple. And then I thought about it afterwards, and I was like, you know what? I take that back. Both guys did win. Both guys did win. I mean, they just did. And I'll tell you why. Because, first of all, if you're going to lose a fight and say that you won afterwards, like it was a net victory, kind of like Colby with Kamaru Usman, that one, I mean, he lost, but his career, here. Till, I mean, he lost, but his career here, and I'll tell you what, You would never guess that those kids came from me, right? That they'll just like run in front of, the room that I'm shooting in and then just scream and then run down the hallway, right? Anyway, but Till, here's the thing. Till is establishing himself as a middleweight. And by the way, how gigantic is Till? Like, he's massive compared to Whitaker, and he was fighting at 170. I couldn't even wrap my brain around how huge he is. The gorilla, he's gigantic. I don't know how he made 170. Anyway, but he only had one fight at 185, right? He only had one fight at 185. He beat Gastelum, and Gastelum since then has not done very well, right? So it kind of minimizes that win for Till. Now he's up against Whitaker, who was the champion at 185 until he lost to Israel, who seems invincible, right? So Whitaker was the champion, right? Like, it's not like this is not a small time opponent. He is up against the best in the division outside of the current champion, right? And he wins the first and fifth round in a very close fight. Very close fight. And so Till has now established himself as a very elite, tip top of the division middleweight. He wins, right? All this is like all you're fighting for is you're fighting for position, right? You're fighting to make your next fight a big fight. You're fighting to make sure that your career is moving this direction, right? So Till was this, then all of a sudden he went like this at welterweight. I mean, like, he went from here to here overnight, right? And then he kind of got knocked down a peg, and then he really got knocked down a peg. He panics. He goes to middleweight. He kind of goes like this because he gets Gastelum, but this wasn't a super exciting fight. And now, there's no way that you would say that his career did this after Whitaker. Now, it's up here. It's a win. It is a win. Both of them won. I totally agree with him there. That's exciting. That is exciting. But, geez, I just got a notification that Dana Stubblefield is dead. Yikes. Maybe I'll do another video about that later, but man, anyway, all right, so let's talk about more Khabib actually real quick. So Khabib said that he only wants to have 2 more fights. He wants to retire 30-0, right? So let's say he beats Gaethje. Dana said that he would entertain Khabib fighting GSP in his final fight. And I thought about that because I don't think Dana's going to give GSP, another fight just because he knows GSP's not going to defend the belt, right? So all he comes in, let's say he comes in, he beats Kamaru Usman, and then he vacates the belt. Sweet. So now you just don't have a champion. The reason why it would make sense with Khabib is because he's going to vacate the belt anyway, right? So like if let's say Khabib comes in, he fights Conor, and he wins, and then he's like, all right, I'm done. Okay, so the belt's vacated regardless, right? So and also what Dana said is he's like, I love Khabib. I would do whatever he wanted to do, right? Dana takes care of his guys that have done well by him. Like that's the thing another thing I respect so much about Dana is like people break his balls, where it's like, oh, well, Dana's taking advantage of his fighters. That's the thing, man. Dana is negotiating with these guys for sure, and he has to do that. He's the CEO of the company. But when guys have done right by him, have become big stars, have generated a lot of dough for the company, then when it comes time for him to take care of them, he does. He does. He gave Cowboy the Conor fight. Obviously, that helped everybody involved. But he's always taking care of Cowboy, man. He's going to keep giving Cowboy fights until Cowboy is getting knocked out. He takes care of his guys, man. And so he said he would give Khabib whatever fight he wanted. Now, I think that Connor's going to campaign hard for that fight. Connor's going to campaign hard for that fight. I'll be very curious to see what happens if Gaethje does win, though. Like how Conor handles that. Like how, if Conor really goes hard at Gaethje immediately following. But anyway, that's a good segue to talk about this, okay? So one of my favorite topics is whatever imbeciles are managing Conor's Twitter, okay? So Conor, Khamzat Chimaev, am I saying that right, fellas? Like, Khamzat Chimaev. So, first of all, actually, let me say this. Khamzat Chimaev, I like this guy. Okay, so someone asked him in the press conference after his fight. They were like, so hey, if you get a new bonus, what are you going to spend that money on? Right? Like, if you just got another $50,000 bonus, what are you going to spend the money on? And he sat there and he looked surprised by the question, first of all. And I'm like, no, he didn't look. He was surprised by the question. Like you could tell that hadn't even entered his mind. Did not even enter his mind. He's a new fighter. An additional 50, 60 grand, that's a lot of dough, man. That's a lot of dough to a guy. That's probably equal to what he's making per fight now or more, right? Like I would say maximum. He's a 40-40 guy right now, right? Now that's going to change very, very soon. But, they asked him what he's going to do with the additional double salary that he made. And he looked like he just had never even considered it. And he was like, I don't know. I think what I would want to do is help people. He's like, I would want to help people. I'm not in this to do like Conor McGregor money and show off my money. That's not what I'm doing this for. I would want to try to see who I could help. And it was a really genuine answer. You could tell he wasn't doing it to bait Conor. He really again, it just goes back to the culture clash between Khabib, Khamzat Chimaev, and these guys who live kind of this, religious-based, simple life, and what Conor looks like to them. Like what that lifestyle looks like to them. These guys, just try to imagine it, right? Like, just seriously try to imagine it. If you grow up and your entire life is about training and family, you get married, probably to the first girl that you ever put a hand on, right? That's your wife. That's the only girl you ever put a hand on. And that's important, you know, like culturally. And then you see, you know, then you're looking at Conor and it's like, and he's lighting money on fire and all you know, and you're like, you know what, you know, people could do with that money, lighting money on fire, driving around flashy cars, you know, he's punching an old man, you know, he gets accused of having like a baby out of wedlock, which ended up not being true, and all kinds of other stuff, you know, and they just look at him and they're like, and for the record, okay, just for the record, I'm throwing a lot of respect over here. There's no question which side of the fence I would be on in that situation, okay? So, like, don't take this as me throwing rocks at Conor, like, because I can certainly be self-aware of my own limitations and flaws, okay? So, if those are flaws, then I have them, okay? But I just think it's a cultural thing, right? But if you think about what Conor looks like to them, he probably looks like, you know, it's probably not rocket science. I just can put myself in people's positions and I can imagine exactly what he looks like to them. And so he says that. I don't think that he necessarily meant it to bait Conor at the time. It's just Conor's very visible example of the point he was trying to make. But then he goes on Twitter and says, what did he say? He said, I'm hungry. Give me, like, so he choked someone out, right? Like he had a picture of him choking out his opponent. And he's like, I'm hungry. Give me dessert to Conor on Twitter. Conor, you know, Conor's response on Twitter was rat lip. That's what he responded with. Rat lip. You know, because he's had the surgery right there. Okay. Again, first of all, it's a shit response. Like, it is. I guarantee you Conor did not say that. I will 100% guarantee you Conor did not say that. Okay. Because again, Conor's a lot of things. Okay. Like a no class, no absolutely zero cleverness to it guy. That ain't him, man. Like, again, I understand Conor's personality. Okay. I would never say that. That's how I know Conor didn't say that. Okay. That's not an insult you would go with. There's a million ways you can insult this guy. Okay. And Conor would probably go with something like, guy, you just beat two unranked opponents. Don't get confused and think that you're somebody that you're not. You know, but with a little bit more thought and a little bit more clever to it. Okay, rat lip. He's gonna make fun of a surgical, like physical, like, you know, it's like it's such a prick thing to say. It's not funny. It's just outright prick shit. Just like I said about the guys who were talking shit to Gaethje. It's like the art of trash talk is about being clever and funny, right? Clever and funny, where you shrink your guy down that you're talking to, you make them feel small, right? You especially if you're Conor, you know how easy that would be with an inferior opponent like that. You want to shrink them down and simultaneously have the people watching laugh and think what you said was clever and funny. Okay? If you look like you're angry, you lose. Okay? It's just like when you're chasing a girl around, right? The person who cares more loses. Okay? Like whoever cares the most loses. The more dismissive you are of a person, the more power you have. Okay? So you never want to appear to be mad. You never want to look like someone got under your skin. And if you say something nasty like that, you know, it looks like you care too much. It doesn't come off well. It doesn't come off like you're in control. It just comes off like you're an asshole. And Conor is the king of knowing that. Conor knows that. He's so in control. He so doesn't give a fuck that he has some idiots managing his Twitter who don't know how to handle this. Like, Conor, give me your Twitter, dog. Okay, I hate Twitter, but give me your Twitter. Let me be you. I will do 100 times better job than these clowns. Okay, 100 times better job than these clowns. Without a doubt, okay? Anyway, so, yeah. That is what it is. Now let's talk about Princess Perry. So, she came out yesterday, 14 hours ago, and she said, Mike Perry, I've been silent long enough. I'm ready to talk. At Joe Rogan, at Ariel Harwani. I read that, I'm like, please. You think that Joe Rogan okay, let me actually just say this. I don't think Ariel is stupid enough to give a platform to a girl who's going to make an accusation about a valuable commodity from the UFC. Okay, I don't think he's that dumb, right? I think he knows better than giving her a platform to make an accusation at Mike Perry, who's a valuable asset of the UFC if he wants to have any relationships over there. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and assume he's not that dumb, right? So Joe for sure is not going to give her a platform. And I would doubt that Ariel will either, but she came out and basically said exactly what had happened. So in a nutshell, there were two stories that she cited, neither of which are even really that big of a deal, to be honest with you. She said that they got in a fight and Mike threatened he said, "I'm gonna beat your ass." And then he was standing outside. He's like, "Send her outside." And she didn't come outside. So there was that. And then he peeled out, where he like drove over their grass or something. I don't know. Peeled out over their lawn or something. And then he got pulled over. But she said he was drunk, but he didn't get a DUI. So I don't know. Bottom line is he yelled, "I'll beat your ass." And then he drove away. Okay. Now, it's not something I would ever say to my wife. I would never threaten my wife. But unless he actually did it, that just sounds kind of like Mike Perry saying things, right? Sounds real mad. And then he drove away, right? Then 2 weeks later, he was at a strip club and she found out that this is what she says. Okay. I don't know if this is true. She said that he paid a stripper to, mouth service him. That's what she said. Okay. She said that he got mouth service from a stripper that he paid. And that when she confronted him about it, he said, "Yeah, it's true. I want a divorce. Send the papers." So I don't even know if that's necessarily cheating. If he was like, you guys had gotten in a huge blowout fight 2 weeks before. There's no indication that they were like back on good terms. He did something that you would do if you were single and that wouldn't really matter. And then when she confronted him about it, he's like, "Yeah, I know. I want a divorce. So just send the papers." So anyway, that's her accusation. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what kind of miles she's going to get out of that. To be honest, that doesn't really sound like anything that is going to doom Mike Perry's career, most likely. But yeah, for the most part, that's what I got. That is what I got today. Hopefully this was long enough for you guys, because I went kind of short term yesterday. But if you like the channel, subscribe and ring the bell. Yeah, something else I wanted to talk about, actually. I remember. So last thing I want to talk about, okay? So I have a really big problem with platforms censoring people, okay? Like, unless the information is like genuinely dangerous, I don't like that at all. I really don't like it. It makes me feel like I'm in a police state. I am very adverse to feeling like people are telling me what to do. Like, I really don't like that feeling at all. And when the government feels like they're telling me what to do, which is often now, actually, I always go into that with a skeptical viewpoint where I'm like, why are they doing this? Like, because in my viewpoint, the government should only be telling you what to do in situations where they are protecting other people. Okay. So in the COVID situation, you certainly can defend that position that they're trying to protect other people. I just think that there are a bunch of bureaucrats that have no ability to create nuance. As a matter of fact, well, this is for another video, but what I saw yesterday was a group of doctors who were live streaming on Facebook, and they were talking about a bunch of things. They were frontline COVID doctors. And one of the things that they pointed out was that there had been a study done in 2005 about one of the treatments when it was SARS, and how it clearly was this study that was done by the National Institution of Health clearly contradicted the current media narrative about that treatment. And they were like, why is this, like, how has no one ever brought this up? Like, how has no one ever brought up the fact that the National Institute of Health has done this study and it says that this is an effective treatment, when now you're saying that it's not, and no one's ever talked about this study? What's that about? And Facebook banned it, YouTube banned it, Twitter banned it. And Trump had tweeted it, and Twitter banned it off Trump's Twitter. And it's like, what's going on, man? I'll tell you exactly what I think is going on, but this is going to be for a bigger video. I'll tell you exactly what I think is going on. I think that the real power had always had total control over what information got out, because all they had to do was control a few mass media outlets, right? A handful of papers that reported things, and then all the smaller things would take that and then report them. A few, news channels, and the smaller ones would take that and then report them. And social media has just driven a sword through that, right? So now they're reactive, okay? Because they can't control what people put on social media. They can only control afterwards, right? So like someone posts it, it goes viral, they're like, get that out of there, get that out of there. Too many people have seen it. So now they're like, wait a minute, why did you not want me to see that? Why would you not want me to see that exactly? And then so people start going, man, maybe I really can't trust this thing. And they get to a place where I am, which is I look at the information that's in the media and then I go, okay, is it credible? Why would it not be credible? And why would someone want me to think that? And I look at everything through that lens where it's like, assume that there is an angle because there's always an angle if it's mainstream media. Always an angle. Even with the UFO disclosure, which I did the video on, you know, like they declassified the same video twice. Okay, they did it 10 months before, and then they did it again 10 months later. Declassified Pentagon UFO video. I'm like, you guys did this exact video 10 months ago. Why is it so important to whoever's doing this that the public takes notice of UFOs now? Okay, like clearly now I do believe in the phenomenon, obviously, but why is it so important that everyone believes now? Why wouldn't you just report it unless there's a reason that you really want everyone to pay attention now? So listen, it's not rocket science because all I have to do is just think about it. If I was in that position, if I was a huge central banker who, you know, took the strings and just, you know, I pressed a button and watched society do what I wanted it to do, because it would be so easy, it's unbelievable. Now, a lot harder with social media, but with the mass media, the majority of people still just completely believe the mass media, which is unbelievable to me. But, I mean, anyway, that's what I got. Subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, let's go. I'll do a whole other video on that.